And we have private sector CEOs who are doing great work. They are mobilizing resources into a fund for COVID. And as a result of that, we have the president attending their sword cutting event in Ghana East for a new 100-bed facility to be built. It's supposed to be built between 4 and 6 weeks. Well, they've made tremendous progress since that commissioning ceremony. And Mama Yosobaji will be live from the area. We'll bring you the pictures. We'll interact with officials of the fund, those who are at the forefront of this, doing this voluntary work for our Republic, Mother Ghana. But also, you would have known that we want to have an interaction with this lady. We'll show you her picture very soon. You'll see her always interpreting in sign language whatever is being said comprehensively at that event, where we have the live press conferences by the COVID team, and you'll find usually here alongside Kujo Ponkroma, the Minister for Information and Member of Parliament for Francia Yorubi. But we'll have touch with us. Good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well.
Okay, great. And just stay put, because this one we have to run by. We told you early on about the Economic Intelligence Unit predicting a win for the president, Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, in the 2020 general elections, or the presidential election, if you will. And it's on the back of what they think is what has been done by the president over the period. And they also did state that if John Mahama, who is representing as the presidential candidate for the NDC for the upcoming presidential election, needs to make sure he makes a headway. He also needs to look at the strategy of whether promises by the Akufo-Addo administration, as reiterated during the electioneering of 2016, have been fulfilled. Now, we want to speak to a political marketer, teaches marketing comprehensively at University of Ghana Business School. Dr. Kobe Mensah is also a known great analyst on the subject. He is joining me. Good morning to you, Dr. Kobe Mensah. First question, what do you make of this observation by the EIU in the first place?
All right, thank you very much. Obviously, we've seen some of these in the reports come up, every now and again, especially when we're heading towards election. It's not new. I mean, even in our own country, we have Uncle Ben Efson, for example, doing polls, showing, the mood, the political mood in the country, the voters' mood, for example. Now, usually when these reports are out, you would see that there are certain, underpinnings. For example, if they have conducted some polls, they have actually collected some opinion polls or expert positions in order to define what is likely to happen, within the space. Now, obviously, when such polls are conducted, you expect series of them so that you can have accumulatively, a very positive, figures, or very, trustworthy figures to actually determine what is going to happen, come the election period. Now, with this particular report, we haven't actually seen, any figures to that. And I particularly had a problem with the underpinnings that they actually used to, to say that, the NPP is going to actually win. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not against the idea that the NPP would win. But of course, as an analyst, as an academic, you would want to see certain, rational, kind of a discourse, certain things to actually affirm that, yes, this is actually true. And I didn't actually see that in the report. And so I was a little bit disappointed. Now, don't forget, majority of these, press are actually commercial press. I mean, they don't do it just for its sake. They're not doing that. They do it for a purpose. And I am sure that they will, one way or the other, contact the people, that actually have a responsibility of the MPPs in a campaign to ask them for some, some returns, i.e. they have to buy the report, they have to buy the analysis, etc. So for me, I think it could be another fishing expedition. You don't know, but definitely, you would have to question the basis on which they actually made that claim.
the analysis that has been done by the EIU, which has been in the business for some time, it also took into cognizance what they thought the government had achieved within the period, even though it was not quantifiable by way the way they undertook it, more like just a commentary. In the first place, if you look at what has transpired over the last 3 years and what has been happening in the first quarter of this year within the political scene, how coronavirus also has come in intermittently, what does that tell you if you have to juxtapose that with what the Economic Intelligence Unit is saying?
Yeah, and that is why I was actually questioning. Don't forget, our political system has been very, very competitive. I mean, if you look at the last 20 years, apart from the early part of their democracy, that is the 1992 and perhaps 1996 elections, that President Rawlings, was at the helm. Obviously, that result, you can take that out. Now, from 2000 onwards, you could see that our elections has been very, 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 competitive. In fact, we haven't actually had a competitive elections anywhere, across the globe, but the Ghanaian election, and that can actually tell you that even a week, for example, can actually swing things. Now, my point is, yes, the party, the government has actually performed a lot of things and have actually done well. Now, if you look at the positions that they used to actually justify their predictions that the administration is going to carry the day. Now, they said that the party NPP actually, its flagship, its infrastructure, and that's what they say in the text. And they said that the party has focused on infrastructure, etc. Now, if you ask the NPP itself, they will tell you that is incorrect. I mean, NPP predominantly focused its position on human development and on economic gains, stronger economic gains. Now, these two are completely different from what they actually emphasized in the report. I mean, we're in this country when we saw that the NDC competed on infrastructure, NPP competed on human development and on stronger economic basis. Now, none of these was actually mentioned in the report. So that could actually call into question the credibility of this report. I'm not actually saying that they cannot win. Surely they can win. But if you want to convince people to believe the report, then of course you have to come again with a very stronger position other than actually speculating, which I find that this report speculating. I don't see any empirical data supporting that argument. And I would rather caution our politicians to be aware and to be wary of some of these practices. Elections by elections, we see people trip into the country just for the purposes of commercializing our elections. And that is not acceptable. If you want a very credible report, let your party members, which we have a very strong academics in both parties, let them do the proper job, let them do the proper opinion collection, ongoing, cycle by cycle, and then let's make sure that we have a stronger data informing what the strategy should be or what the party's position should be. Of course, you can actually contact our academics as well. They can actually do a better job. But this is very speculative, pace, and I think that it's a fishing expedition.
You look at the demographics of our voter population, made up of very young people, and you look at the policy initiatives. Let's put aside what the Economic Intelligence Unit mentioned on infrastructure. But you also do know that this year, the budget had been loaded a lot with infrastructural activities in terms of what the expenditure patterns would be. Of course, albeit with coronavirus coming in. How will these juxtapositions be made where there will be the assimilation of this sort of information from such think tanks or interest groups who undertake these polls, and then also what will be the real actions on the ground in an election year such as this, and how that could influence the votes that they cast?
Yeah, I think one thing is that, when it comes to policy positions and the political parties on, programs, they're not static. They are very dynamic. Obviously, if the party actually feels that, well, perhaps infrastructure could actually be needed in order to support their own agenda coming in, then of course, you couldn't be dogmatic and say, because you campaign on human development, because you campaign on a stronger economy, you're not going to look at the infrastructure. It will be definitely unthinkable for any government to actually think that there couldn't be any infrastructure development, and as a result, wouldn't actually go into that. Certainly, they can actually go into that space. But what we're saying is that, every party has its own objectives, its own aims. And that is why the ideological positions are there. It actually guides you on how you want to develop, and it actually differentiates you from the other. Now, when NPP said that they were going to actually look at human development and they're going to look at a stronger economy, certainly they will build schools. And they couldn't actually say that they won't build schools. They will build schools. And if you look at the free SHS, for example, probably has a two trunks. I mean, it has one, the tuition free, lessening the burden on parents, and then two, putting up infrastructure so that they can actually get a lot of people into the school. So certainly you've seen that. But what we're arguing is that every political party has its agenda. And if you're actually doing the analysis of how they actually, pushing or they're achieving their goals, you want to actually take into consideration what were the key messages and how are they driving that. And that is why I'm thinking that some of these reports, could be questioned in terms of their credibility, because they haven't actually taken into cognizance the party's own agenda, coming into office. If they had made changes, of course, you could actually signpost that there had been a change in in focus. There had been a change in direction. We haven't actually heard that from the NPP officials. Now, so if you actually do that, then of course that would actually call into question of anybody who has a very critical eye will actually question that. And my position is that usually when you're doing these polls, you're actually comparing strength of parties. Now, you see
Well, some freezing there, but that's it. It was actually my last question. Dr. Kobi Mensah is a marketing lecturer with the University of Ghana Business School and helping us with that analysis there. And thank you very much in the meantime. But